Welcome, my fellow sports nerds, to the Borderless Sports Pod. I'm Locke.
I'm Tom. If you enjoyed this clip, check out the full length on our YouTube and Spotify.
Links are in the description. Ciao.
We'll recap a little bit of Wildcard.
Yeah, we'll go through the Wildcard games. I mean, we can just sort of go through them all, just sort of give our 2 cents.
Yeah.
Feels like a week ago.
Saturday games were we had Ravens Steelers.
Yeah, LA, the Clippers, Houston.
Yeah, so this one, you're on Houston this one.
I was.
Yeah, I was on the Chargers, and this game was just like very frustrating if you're on the side of the Chargers. Like, they should have really put some points on the board early. They didn't. They were only up 6 towards halftime, and basically after that, Stroud finally picked up some game in the second half. And like Herbert, he probably just had his worst game of his career. It seems like terrible picks. Some I could argue were the receiver's fault. There was probably 2 that were receiver's faults, but I think he had, how many did he have that whole game?
4.
4.
4.
Yeah, so the other 2 were on him definitely. But yeah, like Texans defense, Will Anderson, he was just getting after him, putting pressure on. Like that's been the one shining light for Houston this year. They've had no confidence in at least in offensively. Like, Stroud's kind of regressed this year from his rookie season, but they find themselves back to back in divisional round. In the playoffs. So Stroud's 2 from 2 going into divisional. So you can't really fold him on that.
Herbert's still not won a playoff game in all his years.
Herbert's still not won. Oh, he's won one, hasn't he? No? Hasn't won a single one.
He lost that game against the Jags where he was up like 20-something at half and then drew the intercepts. So, no, it was a bad performance from Herbert. As you said, that second half, at the end of the second half, the Chargers were up 6-0 and then Herbert interception into a Texans touchdown, into a Chargers punt, into a Texans field goal. So you go from 6-0 into the last few minutes into a 10-6. And then from then on, the Chargers, they just barely score. Couldn't get any offense going. I said, Herbert, it's looking like he's just not one of those big game performers.
Nah, like, after this game, Chargers are going to be like, we need to try and get him some more help on the receiver end. We need to try and boost our offensive line. But, like, you can't look at that game and go, Herbert just did not have it.
No, well,
so you can try and get him all the weapons he has, but is he going to be able to perform when you do have those
And he's played
weapons?
like that when he had weapons. Like when he had Keenan Allen, when he had these guys that they traded away. I said in that Jacksonville game, he's shown that he is prone to making a lot of errors in the big spots.
Yeah.
And now you have a bit more of a sample size. And you're right, he doesn't have the best weapons. But his offensive line is pretty good. But he doesn't have the best wide receivers. And you said they were making drops. They were not helping him in the interception case. But ultimately, he's been touted as one of the sort of tier under those top guys, the Lamar, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen. And at the moment, I feel like a QB in that level who's getting paid like he is, who gets talked about like one of the next big things, should be able to be a force multiplier, like make the team better, rather than be a guy that sort of needs the people around him, needs the help.
Yeah.
Right? He's sort of like more in the Dak Prescott or under category, where he gets talked about as if he's, pushing to that next step. So I think, to be fair, the criticism's starting to pile on him now. Like, I don't think he's going to get much good grace moving forward.
And it's not unfair criticism. Like,
no, not at all.
Yeah.
So, and then, for the Texans side, as you said, 2 back-to-back divisional rounds for CJ and for the D'Amico Ryans, who's excellent head coach. Ironic they burst the Chiefs again in the second round.
Yeah, they beat a struggling Chargers and booked themselves basically a one-way ticket to Arrowhead against the number 1 seed Chiefs.
We'll get into that game a bit later, but it's
going for their 3rd Super Bowl in a row.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup for sure. But look, at the end of the day, I think most Texans fans would have taken a divisional round. It's difficult with the matchup, but with CJ not even having his best year, the sophomore slump, to still make a divisional round. It helps that their division is probably definitely the worst in the AFC and one of the worst in the entire league. Gives them a big advantage. But at the end of the day, you still got to win your games. And the Chargers had been a tough team to get rid of all year. They coach well, good defense. And yes, they got a bit of luck, but I think they deserve the win. And that was 1 from 1 for me. And your bracket was blown up
straight away from the first game.
Yeah. That's usually how it goes, to be honest.
Yeah. So That's how usually the cookie crumbles.
A lot of people like the Chargers in this one. I didn't understand it. I thought the Texans +2 was great money. Even if you thought the Chargers would win, I thought it would be a close game. But
yeah, but you couldn't put faith in that offense. Like it hadn't. Like there's been all this talk about being disrespected and stuff, but they haven't shown anything on offense. Like I think it was pretty much valid. Like they still didn't really. They showed nothing in that first half. Like that was just usually how their season went, and then the second half is where they finally got something going. So
yeah, those last few drives in that second half gave
Yeah.
a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
I just think the playoffs are defense heavy, and it's can your offense take the chances that's given to them.
for sure,
And I just think in that game, Herbert and the Chargers
took nothing.
took no chances,
Yeah.
gave the chances to the Texans, and they were good enough to take them. So
Yeah.
credit to them, and
For sure.
that might be their ceiling.
No, congratulations, Texans.
And then you had obviously the big one for our Sunday. America Saturday was the Pittsburgh-Baltimore divisional round game.
Yeah.
I mean, this game was over by halftime.
Yeah, I mean, people that were on
21-0.
the Mike Tomlin dog line, that's usually been pretty kind to them over the past couple of matchups, especially with the Ravens. It was basically just trying to see if the Steelers could finally get something going, and I think did they even score in the first half? Or did
No,
they
it's
score
21-0.
Yeah, so they finally got Pickens going, like doing those
Oh,
move
that was
balls.
that was the
usually
only
did.
offense they got.
That was the only
it.
offense that they had. So, it comes down to really Steelers moving forward. They're sort of talking about whether Tomlin's the right person to continue.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, Tomlin's a good coach, but Steelers.
They haven't won a playoff game since
They haven't won
2014 or something.
Yeah, so obviously that record's there, but I feel like they just need some help in the quarterback position.
But that's the criticism on Tomlin, is that he's a defensive guy. He
Yeah.
focuses on the defense, the culture, and he doesn't know sort of what to do in the offense. And as a result, that's why the Steelers, since Big Ben has left, has just had such a meddling offense.
Yeah.
And in the league nowadays, your offense, it's an offensive league with all the rules. And the criticism of Tomlin is that, and rightfully so, I think, is that he's a defensive culture guy who doesn't understand too much of the offense or passes it off to the offensive guys on the team. And they're paying the price for that. Like, their defense is always pretty good. I mean, it wasn't good in that game.
Yeah.
But their offense was just abysmal. As you said, apart from the Pickens deep ball, they had nothing. Wilson didn't look too good. The offensive line wasn't good. They couldn't run. I mean, the Steelers, I think, Najee, I can't remember their run yards, like 40 or 50 yards for the game, whereas the Ravens had 300 yards.
Yeah.
Like, when you think of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you think of a gritty team running, like, sort of get on the offensive line battle, get down and dirty. They got absolutely mauled by the Ravens. I think the Ravens had like a 15
Or run.
runs in a row drive. Like, that's just bullying Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And that's usually what Pittsburgh wants to do to other teams. So I just think they're a bit lost. Obviously, he's never had a losing season, which is his shine, like, sort of his good, like, what saves him in these conversations. Like, well, look, if you keep Tomlin, at least you're going to be still making playoffs. You're still going to be in the hunt.
Yeah.
But then the counter to that is, well, what's a goal at Pittsburgh? Is it to lose in the first round of the playoffs like they keep doing? Or is it to try to win a Super Bowl? At the moment, it seems like Tomlin he's not going to be able to push them past that first or second round to be able to be an actual
I don't
challenger.
even think the current QB that they've got can really push them past that either.
That's the thing, they don't prioritize it.
No.
They were talking about how good it was that they have such a cheap QB room. It's like, okay, yeah, but you're paying, like, there's a reason that it's cheap.
Yeah.
It's because they're not high level quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, it's a quarterback league. On offense, it really comes down to, can your quarterback make plays? Like, you can scheme up stuff. You can have the Shanahan Niners offense, which is a lot of runs and a lot of schemes. But at the end of the day, you still need your quarterbacks to make plays and to limit mistakes.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, it's nearly going to be impossible, especially just to win one playoff game, let alone win 4 to make the Super Bowl. So I think it's time to go. I don't think they will. I think it's too big of a risk. You make the playoffs, but the problem is you win enough games where you're never going to get a high QB pick. You're always going to be one of the mid-draft picks.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You're going to trade up and sacrifice your whole future to get a rookie QB? Do you spend all the money?
Tough year to do it as well, because I feel like there's so many candidates out there, but there's so many teams looking for new head coaches. So there's going to be plenty of competition. So, like, trying to get the right guy, and also whether if the right guy wants to come to you, it's going to be a challenge. So
Yeah, for me, this seems just more of a media story. Like, the
Yeah.
media just likes talking about it because it is and to be fair, it is a valid conversation.
I feel like it's Pittsburgh fans that are really talking up
Yeah,
that
they
sort
are.
of story as well. Like
But I
they're
reckon
just
on
wanting
the
change and
inside,
something like that.
I don't reckon the management is actually really discussing it.
I don't think so.
Think it's a big. I think for them it's considered not a success, but okay, it's good enough,
Yeah.
and they'll keep going.
Like, I don't know what their offensive coordinator's like, but can't you sort of maybe try and upgrade your offensive coordinator, try and find someone better, and then, I mean, you just need to try and do something with that quarterback room because you got Fields where he kind of looked decent when you started him when Russ sort of had that injury at the start of the season, and then Tomlin gave the starting job to Russ, but like for Russ, he only had that moonball to Pickens that really had their offensive guns really going, and I don't think Russ is the kind of guy. I don't see him taking any next steps in the next couple of years. He's just getting to that age, and
sure.
he's towards the end. So I would try and get rid of him. Whether Fields is the right person, I don't know. Maybe they just need to try and find someone new.
I think they need to. I think Tomlin's at the risk of being like Belichick, where everything's just very static. Like he's not willing to give up control. Like I think he needs to give up complete control of the offense and just say, hey, bring someone in who's willing to completely scheme it up, have control of offensive personnel.
So does he make the plays on offense, Tom?
He doesn't make the plays, but I don't know how it works in the inner workings, but I don't think that the person on offense has the power in the organization to make personnel changes and to like make large scale changes. Like for example, if you're Bill Belichick and you're the defensive guy on the Patriots, your offensive person is not deciding who the quarterback is and deciding who your wide receivers and what trades you're making. Belichick still had all the power over the personnel. I don't know if Tomlin has that much power, but I'm sure he's been there that long that he would have a large say. And I don't think he's in tune enough with how the offensive changing in the league. And he needs to get someone in who's willing to trust to just take care of all of it. We need this guy. We need to get rid of this guy. We need this guy. We need this QB.
Where currently the offensive coordinator is probably getting a list of his players and being like, okay, this is what I have to.
He's working within the Tomlin system, whereas he needs to be like doing his complete own thing. So I mean, they still made the playoffs. They're a massive franchise, the Steelers. But at the end of the day, this is many years of a row of just looking outclassed. Like at the end of the day, Baltimore and Steelers, they play each other many times. They're fierce rivals. The Steelers typically have had the wood over them, but you're seeing in these last two games that the Ravens are just separating. Like having Lamar Jackson is just making that gulf wider and wider. And typically Lamar plays poor against the Steelers, which sort of saves them. But if Lamar starts playing like he did that game, like well against the Steelers, that gulf is going to get wider because the difference in QB is so stark. It's unbelievable. Like Lamar is top 3 QB in the league, maybe top 4 if you want to add Burrow in, but undeniable. And the gap between the top 4 and the rest is Mount Everest. So
you can't take that foot off the gas in their division as well. Like their division is just so heavy.
You have 2 of the top 4 quarterbacks in that division. You have the Browns, who have a great coach, who have an awful situation in QB. But if they fix that up and get a good rookie QB, they'll be meddling. They've got a good defense, great coach. For sure. So that all they need is a good QB. Obviously, they're going to be difficult because their salary cap's going to be in all sorts of mess. But they'll just have to get lucky on a QB. But yeah, they're in a bad spot in that division, and I think they got a bit inflated this year, winning those early games, those close games in the season. But as you sort of commented on a bit earlier, the Tomlin as a dog, even in the last 4 or 5 games, it didn't work. Like he's been getting smashed as a dog. So even that started to lose him. And a lot of people, I think a lot of the public started jumping on that Tomlin as a dog train, and they got burnt badly these last few weeks. I know a few pros and stuff that I listened to that loved the Steelers plus. They thought it's way too many points. And I feel like last year, early in the year, I would have been on them. But this year, I hammered the Ravens minus.
We both jumped on the Ravens
minus 9. I was like, yes, please.
Yeah.
I just thought they're just a way better team. I love betting on a team like the Bills or the Ravens who know their big game is a couple of weeks from now, but it's still the playoffs. Because typically you can overlook a team.
Yeah.
But I feel like they know that they're going to come out with so much confidence, so much belief that they can do this, that they're ready to hit that next stage, that they're destined for better things. So the Bills and the Ravens, I love those 2 bets and paid off.
Set up this awesome divisional matchup.
Should we segue into later? Denver, Buffalo? I didn't watch this one, so
that was the next one on Sunday anyway, right? Yeah,
that was the first game on our Monday.
Yeah, I didn't watch this one. This was 5 a.m. our time, so I was sound asleep, especially on holidays. But watching the highlights, Denver scored on that first possession, and
that was it.
That was really it. Yeah, it was all Buffalo after that. I think it was 38 unanswered points straight after that.
31.
Yeah. So I mean, for Broncos to do anything here, they had to find their offense, and they found it early and then lost it. So. The better team won. We both jumped on minus, was it 9.5 for Bills?
I think it was 8.5.
8.5? Yeah, so we both jumped on that. I'm pretty happy backing Allen in that sort of spot. I just didn't think the Broncos had that power offensively. Like Well, I mean, going back to that Bengals game where we got absolutely burned, that just sort of put the nail in the coffin for me. I just thought they sort of just need a little bit more time, a bit more preparation to sort of get that going, especially the sort of Bo Nixon Peyton connection that they've got. They've got Cortland Sutton. He performed really well for them in a receiving core, but I think they just need to find a little bit more juice in that offense. Defense is looking insane, so next year I feel like they could be a sneaky team to watch.
I think for the Broncos, it's a win. Like, you're never going to go into Buffalo, rookie QB's first playoff game, into Buffalo against a team that's going to go on for bigger and better things. I think for them, take this season as a win.
Obviously, when you're there, you want to win.
Of course, but just the grand scheme of things, just sort of wipe this one away. As you said, they've got plenty of. It's only Sean Payton's second year, but his first year with a QB that he really liked.
Yeah.
Bo Nix has had an excellent season. The defense has been, got to remember last year they got 70 put on them by Miami, who's not even in the playoffs this year, and now they're in the playoffs, right? So how that's changed, the defense has looked good. So for the Denver, I think they're moving on to bigger and better things, and I think they'll just keep improving year on year, and that division is going to become, the Raiders are going to get left behind, because with Harbaugh and Peyton in charge of the Chargers and Broncos, with obviously the Chiefs in there, that's three teams you think that are going to be challenging for playoffs every year, so that's a good division. And then for the Bills, they just ran, their percentage of run plays is quite staggering. Like, they run a lot. A lot of people think of the Bills as a Josh Allen heavy team, but James Cook's getting a lot of yards, a lot of carries, which
putting a lot of faith in him, and he's like sort of helping them. Yeah,
so that's how they're going to. That was all this criticism of the Bills a year or two ago, that Allen's having to throw 40 or 50 times to win a game. It's just not sustainable. Whereas now they're supplementing him with the run. Allen can run when he wants to, get nice play action. I think Allen, what was it here? 20 of 26 passing, 2 TDs. Just efficient. And then 120 yards for James Cook, and then 46 for Allen. That's the perfect blueprint to win that game. In Buffalo, it's cold. That's the way to do it. And we'll get into that with the preview of the Ravens, but that's going to put them in good stead. I think a lot of people think the Ravens are the run-heavy team, but I think the Bills actually have a more heavier run percentage than the Ravens do.
Really?
It's neck and neck. I think they're both top 4 or top 5.
I wouldn't even think that.
Exactly. So that's why it's sort of, a lot of people, I think, are going to have, we'll get into it, but I have a few good bets on this game where I think a lot of people are expecting a certain thing, but...
Have you switched to, I think we'll talk about it later, but...
Philly at Green Bay. Again, this one...
Philly at Green Bay.
Green Bay at Philly, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Saquon showed up, thankfully, for them. These Eagles, man, their passing game, they're really good, but there's so much talk that comes out of their camp and everything, and all this drama that comes on, and it just rubs me the wrong way. But yeah, they're an insane team defensively. Offensive line's probably the best in the league as well. But there's just all these stories that come out. And obviously on that, AJ Brown reading the book, so they all this talk. So you got AJ, he doesn't get enough targets from Hurts and stuff like that. Hurts has been copying some stuff from the media. With his production levels, they've just been relying heavily on Saquon, and he's sort of been getting them most of the yards and offensive power plays through them. And Green Bay, they just didn't look like they really deserved to even be in the playoffs. And they just, Jordan Love, he just struggled, and I think they were missing. Who were they missing? Kraft. Who was the tight end that Green Bay was missing? But yeah, they were missing some firepower, and they just couldn't keep up, to be honest.
Yeah, so, Jordan Love, I think, is playing a little injured. He didn't look himself. He had a pretty poor year overall.
Did he injure his groin the week before or something?
I know he was coming in with injury concerns. He threw 3 picks. A couple of those picks with him chasing the game at the end. But early on, they just didn't look... I thought... one of my bets on this game... I was heavy on the Eagles, but one of my bets to sort of hedge a little was Packers to win the first quarter or the first half, and the Eagles to win outright, because typically the Packers start off well. Matt LaFleur is really good at scheming things early, and then typically the Eagles have a poor first quarter, have a really good second half, and they start to build up the run game. But it was opposite. Eagles up 10-0 at the quarter, won the first half pretty comfortably, and then just run it out for the rest. But I was just surprised at how little juice the Packers had offensively early on. As you said, they just didn't look like they did last year. This time last year, just going into Dallas and
they had that win.
The cans out of the Dallas Cowboys. So very different this year. It was a weird season for them. They started off with the loss with Love, and then Malik Willis comes in and wins like 3 games. Love comes back in, loses, and Love was just injured and not injured like the whole season. Like, you know what I mean? It was kind of like
never could have really got going, and like just had some terrible picks, like red zone territory, and just giving up points that way. Like there were bad picks that he was giving up, and like he was saying like shooters are going to shoot basically. Like he was going to make that throw. Like he's got that sort of confidence behind himself, but just couldn't really get going this year. And yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely not going to leave them out next year. Like they're going to come back. They're still a pretty decent team. So
yeah, I'm just kind of a little more just melancholy on them. I'm kind of just like, I've never been too high on them this year.
Just meh.
A lot of people were very high on them. I was kind of like, what they did last year at the end of the year, that more struck me as a team that got real hot. Like a young team that got a lot of belief and like got on a run, rather than a team that was taking that next step. So a lot of people like picking this year for the Packers to miss the conference championship, to even make the Super Bowl. And I'm like, I just didn't see it. This year they had moments where they looked really, really good, but at the end of the day, they're in a very tough division. They have a lot of weaknesses in different areas, and they're good on both ends of the ball. Like they're good offensively, they're good defensively,
but not great.
Not great, and both of them have the ability. Both sides of the ball have the ability to drop down in certain moments. Like they don't really complement each other too well. So for me, next year I'll be interested to see what their total is, like their win total is to start the year. Because I think it's a team that people just want to believe in. But I don't know. I'm still just going to be a little hesitant on them. And on Green Bay, on Philly, we can just sort of talk about more about them when.
We'll touch on them when we talk about.
That was a typical sort of game for Philly, and as you said, the biggest questions of them are the what their vibes are. They're on this massive win streak. They had a great season, and yet it feels like
it's still like all this weird commentary.
So strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we Washington Tampa. This was a heartbreaker for me because I was on Tampa, and this was like the only game basically all week that I lost. Yeah. If Tampa won this, I think I was going to make $600.
Yeah.
So heartbreaker. The Baker fumble for me was the turning point. Yeah. The Tampa got that massive stop. The Commanders had that first and goal from like the 2-yard line. I think it was a pass interference in the end goal. But the first down on the 1-yard line and couldn't get it in. They went for the 4th down, didn't get it, got the turnover. Bucks get it. I think they're already up 6 at this point or something like that, around maybe 4 or 6 at this point. They got out of the 1-yard line. They're starting to march down the field. You're thinking, all right, if they get a touchdown or get a field goal or start to take some time off this clock, they're going to win this. Next thing you know, on their own 30-yard line, Baker just, for some reason, one of those freak plays where he like sort of trips and the ball hit the running back, and it was supposed to be one of those ones where you fake to one running back and go to the guy sweeping around the back.
Yeah.
And he drops it. Commanders get the ball, score the touchdown, and you could just tell that I think the Baker was just upset. The defense was like, oh man, we just got this stop on the 1-yard line. Now we have to go again in that field position. And then, you got to give credit. For me, this game was Jaden Daniels just... I'll say, wow. I haven't watched him on Jaden Daniels this year, but when I watched him this game, the amount of 3rd down completions, the amount of 4th down completions, the amount of times where, as a Bucks fan in this game, I was thinking, okay, get a stop here. And he just kept finding the open man. Completely different to Sam Darnold, like when you watch later on, who just, every time he was under pressure, he just held the ball and couldn't find it. Daniels was releasing it every time he needed to, getting it to the right guy, getting the running when he needs to. It was just a very clutch game. Baker played well, apart from the fumble, but at the end of the day, they just controlled time and possession. That was just the perfect... I said they kept getting to 3rd down territory, and they'd make the play and just keep the drive going, The Baker and the Bucks barely didn't even have that many offensive plays to really make a run at it. Because at the end of the day, when they did have the ball, the Bucks offense was looking good. Mike Evans was getting free. They were making some nice plays. Yeah. It's just, credit to the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. He's an excellent rookie season. Yeah,
100%. Like, I thought this was going to be an absolute, offensive powerhouse of a game. But both defenses really sort of stepped up. Washington's side, they were getting after Baker. So, that, their linebackers were just piercing through the O-line, getting the Baker, putting pressure on. But when Baker was able to have some time, he was finding his man still. The secondary for Commanders wasn't really performing. Mike Evans was always getting open against Lattimore. They've usually...
Oh, yeah, they had to switch him. They switched to...
Yeah, they've always had a 1v1 matchup when in the NFC South when it was Bucks v Saints. But
Evans was just all over him.
Yeah, so the secondary still... a bit shaky for the Commanders, but their D-line getting afterwards, so it kind of won them the game there. But nothing against Jaden. Like, Jaden's having an absolutely outstanding season. As you said, he's been clutch.
Just calm, cool, collected.
The Hail Mary against the Bears.
Yeah.
Like, those sort of moments. And he never seems to get so high. Like, he's such like a mellow sort of like...
It's a perfect quarterback temperament, yeah.
Cool, calm, collected sort of...
You can't get too high or low
sort of
as a
demeanor.
quarterback. You just have to take every play as it comes.
And I think that's like his age. Like, the problem when he was coming out of college was how old he was compared to the others. But, that's just experience now. So... it's his rookie season, but he's definitely one of the older ones that came out of the draft this year, and he's really excelled that sort of Commanders offense, and booked him a divisional matchup with.
Commanders
with
getting
the
to the
Lions.
divisional round is crazy.
It's massive.
No one would have predicted
Huge.
this.
Yeah.
Nobody would have predicted this. So he turned that team around. It just shows that hitting the right QB in the draft can be everything. Caleb Williams wasn't able to get the Bears to a playoff game with a much better team. Yeah. CJ was able to last year. Bo Nix was able to this year. The right QB, sort of as we said when we were talking about the Steelers, is starts and ends there. If you don't get that problem solved, nothing else really matters. Yeah. And then the last one, Minnesota, LA. This was the game I couldn't get a read on all week. Had no idea, didn't really bet on it, had no feeling, just wanted to watch the game. And at the end of the day, for me, it was just, as we said in the text, was just a Sam Darnold disaster class.
Absolute disaster class. I think I was having a bit of fun after the game. I texted you. I said the biggest winners were LA Rams. Second were the LA community, obviously with all the stuff that's been going on with them. And then third was JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, his starting role is guaranteed next
year. Joking, but not kind of joking.
No.
Like, it was...
you listened to the press conference after of the coach?
No,
Kevin O'Connell. He was basically saying that, I'll never forget this year with Darnold and the run we went on. It was like so just... You got the sense that the decision's already been made that it's going to be McCarthy next year. It was a great year this year with Darnold. They went, had a great run, had a chance to win the number 1 seed. But at the end of the day, if you're a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl, Darnold's shown that he's not the guy you can trust. Like, even if you go 15-2 and get the 1 seed, are you going to trust that when it comes to that playoff game or a conference final game, that if he gets put under any pressure, he's not going to just shit the bed?
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Obviously, it's hard when you're sort of watching on the telly how... Like, whether the receivers were getting open, like, they've got some...
the best receiver in the
Justin
game.
Jefferson and Addison, like, they kept Jefferson to under 60 yards, and they had Addison to 0 yards. Yeah. So, like, he just wasn't able to find his weapons. So, whether the Rams' secondary were just covering him too well, or he was just sort of indecisive, but there was a couple of key throws that I thought he missed. And then, just holding on to the ball. Just like, what was it, 8 sacks the whole game? 9 sacks.
You got to give credit, though, because the Rams' defensive line was able to get pressure with only rushing 4, which then allowed them to drop back in coverage and cover. As you said, we don't know not at the game, not watching the All-22, seeing if the receivers are open. But either way, you could tell there was a few sacks where... Like, a couple of sacks, you just can't do anything about them. But there was a couple where you could tell the coach was getting frustrated. It's like, just get rid of it. Like, there's a couple where you just can't take it. Like, it was like a field goal territory or only like a second or third down. Like, live to fight another day type shit. And he was just holding it, even dropping back, taking more yards. Yeah. And the problem was, it's not just a one game. He was doing the same thing the last week against Detroit. And I remember saying earlier in the year, that I don't think it's going to be fair for people to take away what he's done this year if he fails in the playoffs. But then... the way it's happened is different. It's not just like he's not played well or he's just missed throws or thrown intercepts. It genuinely looks like the moment's been too big. Like, as the game's got more pressure and the game rose in intensity, he shrunk. Like, he what he's been doing all year, where he was releasing the ball, finding the right man, making the right decision, all of a sudden switched in the big games, and he started making the wrong decision. He started hesitating. He didn't want to release the ball. He was scared of throwing intercepts. Every time he got pressure, he didn't know where to go or couldn't feel it. That is like that is a worse indictment than just playing poorly. Because I said, if you're a team that's trying to push to that next level or trying to challenge for a title, now you're thinking, we can't risk it. Because if we get in any big game where they can put pressure on the QB, is he going to shrink again? I mean, the data would say yes. So it's probably the worst case scenario for him, because I think even if he thrown like 300 yards but threw 3 picks and just sort of, like one of those, not an awful game but not a good game, you know what I mean? Yeah. I still think it would have been okay. But the way it went down, where he we looked overawed. Yeah. You just, in 2 games in a row as well. It's not just like the one, it's the 2.
And with both of those games, like, with those matchups, obviously Lions, they've been so good against the run defensively all season, and Rams, like, when you look at their stats, it was more the last like 4 or 5 weeks since the Bills, like, their rushing defense has even gradually got better. So they weren't able to get Aaron Jones much of the ball, so it heavily relied on Sam Darnold to make those plays to his receivers, and that you just couldn't do it. So,
and that's going to happen sometimes in the playoffs. Like sometimes the team's just going to try and stop the run, sell out, stop the run, and make the QB beat them. And at the end of the day, so the credit to the Rams' defensive line, because the Rams' defense do need credit. It's not just the Darnold just playing awful. They were able to pressure him, rushing forward. Yeah. And they had some good schemes. And the Rams' defense is getting a lot better. But at the end of the day, if you're going to, like, that's the difference. We're talking about a QB that was going to get paid 40, 50 million a year. You have to be able to overcome that. Like, if you have your run game stopped, like, think of Burrow. Burrow doesn't have a run game in 90% of the games he plays. Yeah. He's still able to do what he needs to do. Like, if Burrow's in that Vikings team, he wins that game. Like, I'm no doubt in my mind. 100%. So that's what I'm saying. Like, the fact, like, now that just puts him way back in the categories, back to, like, maybe he'll get like a 15, 20 million deal. Maybe he'll get a backup deal again. It's just the conversation has switched so much. But I mean, look, ultimately, such a disappointing season for Minnesota. It's similar to the 2 years ago with Kirk Cousins, where they had that massive win streak in the middle of the year, where remember they're winning all those close games? That's where, like, every one-score game they were winning, and then they lost in the early rounds in the playoffs. Like, it just seems like, I don't know if it's a coach thing, I don't know what it is, but it seems like they're so good in the regular season recently, but they just can't push through and make it.
Is that when Cousins got injured towards the later half?
No, that was last year. He got injured. But yeah, that was 2 years ago. That's when Cousins started to become like the cool guy Cousins, where he was wearing the chains and shit. And, like, it's like, that's when they were riding real high. Yeah.
But that's when he got into the Netflix quarterback.
Exactly. Yeah, that's when he was feeling himself and become the next Hollywood superstar. But it's been a similar story for the Minnesota Vikings, where they just haven't been able to get any playoff run going. But yeah, look, with their weapons, their coach, their defense, I don't know if Flores will still be there, but they'll still be a good team next year. It's just a matter of, can McCarthy do what Darnold couldn't, where he could at Michigan, but can you do it in the NFL? Like, can you be that guy that doesn't help your team lose, but just either is equal? Because you've got so many weapons and such a good team around him that if you're a QB on a Minnesota Vikings, you just have to be competent, not make mistakes, and take the moments when they appear. And that's what Darnold couldn't do at the end of the year. Yeah.
So unfortunately, they will basically go into a first season with McCarthy, seeing as he was injured all this season, and
basically just a reset, right?
It feels like a reset for him. So
what's his injury again?
Sorry,
what was his injury? The ACL.
I thought it was something with the arm. Maybe it was ACL. That rings a bit of a.
You'd prefer I don't know. Either way, a season-ending injury, you got to worry about, like, re-injury. What's he going to be? But surely with the NFL doctors and stuff, you'd be. You'd be.
He ended up going overseas, didn't he? To
That's never
to have
a good
those
sign.
procedures. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the wildcard recap. Congratulations to making it to the end of the video. If I may be so bold to ask for your like and subscription to the channel, we would very much appreciate it.
Click the link on screen to check out the full app and other segments on the channel. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching.
Namaste.